Hello there everyone, what's up? How have you been doing? I hope that you're safe and healthy and having a really great day. I am finally back with a new video and I'm so sorry that my upload schedule has been all over the place. I am very sorry, but I hope I will be able to get on track with it. I have the very lame excuse of being busy with university. That's all. It's a lame excuse, I know, but bear with me. Finally, I am back and it's with the sort of video that I always enjoy watching, a video essay. A couple weeks ago, I watched The King, Eternal Monarch, which was the most anticipated K-drama of 2020. While it was far from a perfect K-drama, I certainly enjoyed it. There are many parts of it that are exceptional, only that, unfortunately, but also inevitably, there are many parts that may come as disappointing. Apparently, the Korean audience did not enjoy it as much as the international audience. Most of my friends who also watched this drama enjoyed it, which makes me think that perhaps there is some sort of intimate reason why the Korean audience did not love it as much as we, the international audience, did. I cannot speak from the perspective of a Korean viewer, and nor do I attempt to, because I am very sure that a Korean individual has a very different form of understanding than I do. After all, it is part of her or his culture, while I am half a planet away and only capable of admiring every single bit of it from afar. Something I can do instead is give you some technical insight on how certain elements of the story and some of the characters actually prevented us from getting involved into the story. Please remember that the commentary to come is based on my personal experience watching The King, Eternal Monarch, and therefore it does not represent in any way actual figures or professional reviews. All opinions are my own, and the value judgments that I make come from the experience I have in writing, script writing, in crafting stories, building characters, building relationships, and creating plotline. And if it wasn't already obvious, a spoiler alert is in order. I hope that you will enjoy this new sort of content, and now, because this intro is already very long, let's dive into the video. For those of you who are not that familiar with The King, Eternal Monarch, allow me to quickly sum it up. The setting is split between real-life Republic of Korea and the alternate universe Kingdom of Korea, whose king is the main character, Egon. He finds the portal between the two dimensions and meets Jung Tae-ul, whose identity card he found 25 years before on the night of his father's assassination by his traitor uncle. This traitor uncle comes and goes between the two worlds, assembling a team to wreak havoc and finally come to power. And the first thing that we're gonna talk about is world building, or the theory of the rainbow rice. The whole alternate universe setting was the real wow factor for this K-drama, and you can't deny it. I have always had this sort of soft spot for anything involving royal. So for me, a modern royal court, the life at the palace, the history of the dynasty and of the royal family, all those made me really enthusiastic about the universe that the K-drama proposed. And I don't really have anything bad to say about this side of the setting, meaning that inside the royal palace, everything there just made sense and was well crafted and really beautiful. But this is where the goodness of the world building ends. This is all there is that is well built. Outside of it, there are huge missed opportunities. There must be so many different things in the kingdom world from the republic world, but those things were never properly shown, or never shown at all. Many times these little intricacies were reduced to one character saying, "In my world, this thing is different," and that is certainly disappointing. This sort of thing is and isn't the focus of the drama at the very same time, meaning that there were many things more important to think of, but then again, the core of the story is the alternation between the two worlds. The core of the story is bringing those two worlds together, not just through the characters that move between them, but also by highlighting different sides of each dimension. This thing means more world building, and the more world building there is, the more attractive it is for the viewers to immerse themselves into it. When you start a project with such an ambitious setting, a whole different world, you gotta know how to make it so attractive that the viewer would want to come back and visit it again with each and every episode. The show missed a huge opportunity during Taewool's first visit to the Kingdom of Korea, when she went through Busan and later through Seoul and checked out different things. Most of the time she checked whether certain places were in the same location, like the police station she was working at. She went to see whether her house was in the same spot. However, honestly, that's irrelevant to the world building, because there are obvious changes in the way the characters behave, in the things that they do, and even in their bodies, like how how Elim's Republic counterpart had polio. There are so many variables, and if only one of them changes, then someone's entire life could be different. Therefore, so many minutes of her checking out the house, the dialogue with the house's owner, all of that was useless because of how low of a chance there was for everything to be in the same spot as in her world. This was something that they could have done in a shot or two. Now, don't get me wrong, her behavior is natural, want to see whether her family is in the same spot, but they wasted 5 minutes of screen time for that scene. They could have made it in a minute and a half and used the remaining time to actually give the viewer something interesting to see. If a random person came to me and said that his world had some magical, interesting thing that is not in my world, that does not exist in our world, like, I don't know, rainbow colored rice, I wouldn't care if they were a king or a random farmer. I still want to know more about their universe. Therefore, it would have been so much more interesting if she came across such a extraordinary thing and wondered how is that possible, how that came to be. That would have been a great example of a highlight of the difference between the two worlds. Again, it's not like they did nothing. There were some attempts at world building, but most of them were handled in an embarrassingly mediocre fashion. For example, when Egon came to the Republic world and said that in his universe they don't have the same fried chicken. Now, the reason behind why the fried chicken was such a big thing was that that particular brand was sponsoring the drama. Nonetheless, they thought they could kill two birds with one stone, promote the fried chicken and do the world building. However, this sort of world building falls quite flat and it's not great as it may seem. Supposedly, the Republic world is our world. Therefore, the viewer knows most of what's happening there. The impact is so much bigger when a person that the viewer can relate to, a person from our world, Teul in this case, goes to another world, another dimension, somewhere else, somewhere extraordinary, and finds there something incredible, something that the viewer himself or herself knows doesn't exist in the real world, like rainbow rice. I realize how stupid this example may sound, but it does its job for the sake of this discussion. Let me put it another way. An object is defined by the features and the components it has, and not by what it lacks. You don't define a human being by saying humans don't have tails. So when you see a human being with a tail, you know there's something extraordinary or strange going on, and you want to know more about that person or the world he's from. Similarly, the Kingdom of Korea isn't incredible or interesting in any way because it lacks that specific brand of fried chicken. But if it had rainbow rice, then that would have made it much more interesting because it's something different, something unexpected, and something that attracts the curiosity and therefore the interest of the viewer. Makes the viewer want to see more of it, more of this interesting otherworldly kingdom. To sum up this topic, the world building is well laid out when it comes to the royal palace and the life inside because it's so evidently different and so evidently attractive. The royal palace is the rainbow rice because the viewer knows they can have it in their world. They want to immerse themselves in the fictional universe as to have access to it. Outside of the palace, there's hardly anything else different that would make an impact on the viewer, and this means that no viewer is really interested in the Kingdom of Korea, just the palace, and that's all. Now, let's talk characters. One thing that I want to make clear in the beginning of this discussion is the fact that I think most of the cast was incredible. Therefore, I have nothing bad to say about the cast. The portrayals were really on point. Some of the performances were actually pretty exceptional and honestly one of the biggest highlights of the whole drama. Because I want to start on a positive note, I was gonna name my favorite character, or actually better said, my favorite dual role. Unsop and Young, two amazing characters and one amazing dual role performed exceptionally by Woo Do-hwan. I know he was a fan favorite and I totally agree with that. He was my favorite character also, and honestly he was such a scene stealer every time he was on the screen. So wow, I only have praise for Woo Do-hwan and his dual role in this drama. He was really great. And then there is Prime Minister Koo So-ryung, a strong, ambitious, cunning character that many people adored, and for good reason. We need more of those powerful women in K-dramas, no more Mary Sues and goody two-shoes, and her overall premise was just great. But other than that, I believe that she was severely misused and underused. For nearly half of the story, she's just delivering reports and trying to get into Egon's palace. Considering that she was introduced as a second antagonist, she didn't really play that role well until maybe halfway through the series. For a couple episodes in the later parts of the story, she actually does some important things. She raises the stakes of the game. Her collaboration with Elim is a bit anticlimactic, but it's still the most she did in the drama. On a conceptual level, she was the perfect candidate for a perfect character. Too bad that her actions only barely scratch the surface of her potential. Kang Shin-jae is Taewol's colleague on the detective team, and the story's only half-assed attempt at a love triangle. The best part about him is his backstory, how he was swapped between two worlds as a child by Elim, and honestly, that side plot was interesting to follow and even emotional at times, but it served literally no purpose at the end of the day. I really can't see how Shin-jae's story helps move the plot forward in any way, and generally I believe that Gon and Taewol's story would have happened the exact same way, whether he existed or not. And unfortunately, this shows that the writer didn't really think everything through. She found an interesting concept and wanted to use it, but did not make sure that it actually played a role in the main story. Basically, Kang Shin-jae didn't really have a place in The King Eternal Monarch. I think he would have been better as the lead of a whole different K-drama series whose only focus was him. I thought the villain was pretty well crafted, even though there are some things about him that do not make sense. For example, this man killed 4 people in the first episode, and then for the next 4 or 5 episodes he was laying low, he was painting, he was making paint and things like that. And I feel like there's such a huge difference. I know villains don't like spend every minute of their life doing criminal stuff, but still, I can't believe that the man who actually did so much in the first episode, killing 4 people, stealing half of the flute, traveling between worlds, was just walking around and painting for the next 4 episodes. I feel like he was sort of underused for a couple episodes, and this way he just did not seem that much of a threat until, I don't know, episode 6, or I'm not sure when he and Gon have the first official meeting somewhere in the Central Square in the Kingdom of Korea. I'm not sure which episode it was, but I think that only around that episode the threat of this villain actually became real, and I as a viewer sort of started understanding the stakes of the story. Another thing that sort of bothers me a lot is the fact that his motivation is pretty lame. I mean, this K-drama was made in 2020, the world already had Thanos and Killmonger and the Joker, so many villains so well developed that have really interesting motivations behind their actions, villains that actually make you root for them to win. And then at the other end of the spectrum there is Elim, who is just a power-hungry villain with nothing more to say, and frankly said, this is very disappointing. Now, the bane of my existence, the main characters, Chung Tae-woo and Egon, but mostly Egon. Chung Tae-woo started as a pretty darn good character, but her evolution was absolutely horrible. She was really badass during the first 5 or so episodes back when she was still skeptical about Egon's story. And throughout the series, whenever she did any detective work alongside her team, those scenes were just priceless and remain her best scenes. As soon as her romantic arc with Gon starts, she becomes a generic Mersu, a damsel in distress at times, so that the only personality trait she retains by the end of the series is being in love with Egon. Now, the real bane of my existence is Egon. I could not stand this character, seriously, and he's the main character. Don't ask me how I managed to keep going episode by episode, considering how much this character annoyed the hell out of me. It wasn't without good reason. Just allow me to tell you why I think Egon is the absolutely worst character on the King Eternal Monarch. I can sum up why I dislike him so much in 2 big reasons. 1, his only personality trait is being a king, and 2, it feels like the writer gathered all the best traits, all the ultimate boyfriend goals, and just stuffed him with everything. Him cooking for Taewoo repeatedly and behaving like a chef is very dumb, because all his life he had food prepared, cooked for him by professional chefs and cooks at the royal palace, and there was no reason in hell why, whenever he wasn't on royal duties, he'd go through the kitchen and try to master a japchae recipe. Him being an ace in a couple different sciences, like in physics and mathematics and even goddamn astrology, is annoyingly unrealistic and also disrespectful towards those sciences, because each and every science is complex and a huge domain that people spend years and years mastering, and then there is this 30-something king who seemingly just makes Albert Einstein look like a loser. In one episode, somebody says that Egon was the weakest in his squad, and 2 episodes later, he is this strategy genius ready for war. I remember the episode where the Japanese Navy trespassed into the Korean waters and Egon made a stand and wanted to show that Kingdom of Korea is a powerful nation. That was a nice patriotic message, which I actually appreciated, and I thought that it was one of his better scenes, you know, when he was standing up for his country and all that. But it was also very dumb, because he was on the ship going against the Japanese ships, and at any moment the Japanese Navy could have just, I don't know, started shooting with something and he would have died a dumb death. Okay, now I get it, he knew he had the plot armor, he knew he was a main character, and obviously nothing would have happened to the main character in the 5th or whichever episode that was in, but still, it was dumb. Episodes later, the relations between Kingdom of Korea in Japan still weren't that good. The prime minister said at some point to some other politicians that there was a risk of going to war. And what did Egon do? He went to Taewol's world to spend some days with his girlfriend. I get it, romantic plot device, but it was dumb. For someone who is such a genius in 5 sciences, he was very dumb in like leaving his country when his country was almost going to war against their neighbor country. Like, that's just not how you lead a country, dumbass. He was portrayed like 2 episodes earlier as this very great strategist, obviously smarter than an admiral with decades of experience on the sea, and yet he left his country for a booty call. Regarding the romance, I think the drama was way too focused on the romance part and lost sight of other elements, and yet it didn't even do that thing properly. There were many times when there was a really interesting side plot going on, a cool build-up of a political crisis, and everything got interrupted because Egon wanted to go to Taewol's world and spend some time with her, eat some fried chicken in the process obviously. A couple episodes later, the very same thing happens again, and it just annoys me how many compromises were made just to show a fluffy and sugary love story. And still, it wasn't good romance. It was instant love, and it was disappointing as heck. Honestly, like in episode 8, they said, "I love you." But 3 episodes before that, they were like sitting rocks next to each other. For the first like maybe 5 episodes, Taewol couldn't believe a word Egon said. She was thinking he is crazy. And then she went to his world and started to see that actually he wasn't crazy, he was telling the truth. But then out of a sudden, when she started believing him, she also suddenly started loving him. Like, there weren't like the normal stages of developing a relationship. They met and then they suddenly loved each other. Also, this happens for Egon. I get it that she was the woman he had been looking for nearly 25 years, but still, that doesn't mean that he should fall in love with her at first sight. It's just stupid, honestly, because in real life, that would not happen. I get it, it's a K-drama, it's not supposed to be realistic, especially considering that it's an alternate universe setting, but this way, the viewer is not engaged. As a writer, if you do not portray the love story carefully, you do not go through the proper stages of building this relationship, you lose the viewer. You lose them along the way because the viewer does not know how to jump between stages, from knowing to loving. Because in real life, the viewer would normally go through those stages. And if you miss one in your story, in the story that you want to craft, then the viewer does not feel compelled to care for it. I was so much more engaged in the love story between Woo Do-hwan and Kim Yong-ji's characters, Eun-sup and Nari and Young and Sung-hwa. Those characters, those relationships were really exciting to follow. Like, will they one day? I kept asking myself, will they one day? For all 16 episodes, I wish there was so much more development for those relationships. Even though at the end of the series we had this sort of clarification that they would eventually get together and all that, I honestly felt robbed of those relationships because the build-up was so great. The build-up was not great at all. It was pretty bad for Taewol and Ga's relationship. I get it, the whole soulmate situation, but there are thousands of soulmate stories that respect all the proper stages in the normal development of a relationship so that the viewer stays engaged. Honestly, at this point, the build-up is more important than the part in which the relationship itself takes place. And especially for a K-drama viewer who literally waits 9 episodes for the characters to get together on a normal basis. Taewol and Gon did not know each other, did not trust each other that much, and 1 episode later they say their I love yous. It's like wearing a coat but without actual clothes underneath. There's no basis for that relationship, and it just does not make it exciting for the viewer to actually root for them. Actually, it makes the viewer root more for them to stay alive because the stakes were pretty high. Their lives were actually being threatened by the villain. So the viewer rooted for them not to die, to stay alive, but not to get together. The relationship did not feel earned. And that is a problem, especially when the focus. You have an incredible setting, you have some good and interesting characters, and you have all those opportunities for plots, but you still focus on the romance, and still at the end of the day, that romance does not feel earned. I'm not sure what sort of a conclusion I can have for this analysis over the King Eternal Monarch. Like I said in the introduction, I would be lying if I said I did not enjoy this drama. Watching it with any random viewer's eyes, yes, I thought this drama was great. However, in terms of the writing, I feel like this was the thing where it was lacking. The production, the director, the cast, the crew, they were all incredible, but there were some letdowns in terms of writing. Now, I don't want to blame all of those mistakes and letdowns on Kim Eun-suk. I anticipated this drama because it was her new drama, because I've loved her previous 3 dramas, Descendants of the Sun Goblin and Mr. Sunshine. I really love them, and they're among my favorite K-dramas of all time. I was excited for her to write a new thing, and when she released the synopsis for The King, Eternal Monarch, even before the cast was announced, most of the cast actually I did not even know them before. I knew Kim Gon and Lee Min-ho, but I did not know Woo Do-hwan, who is now probably in my top 3 favorite actors of all time. I was first of all excited for this drama because of her writing, because I knew she could write a good drama. She'd done it before, and I did not see why she would not be able to do it this time. I think most of all, she miscalculated her own ambition, and because of that, she did not give enough attention to all the elements she wanted to have in the story. The whole incredible setting of alternate universes, jumping between dimensions, characters, side plots, little plot lines that adhered to the main plot and brought it forward, the romance part, the politics part. There were just so many elements, and I feel that she miscalculated how much time she would need to develop each and every element so that it can actually be good enough and it would be satisfying and engaging for the viewer. Maybe this is the reason why the drama did not feel unitary at times. For example, some of the detective scenes felt like from a different drama than the palace scenes. Yes, I know at the end of the drama, all stories, including those two, come together, and I'm gonna give Kim Eun-suk all the credit because she deserves it. She ended the story, in my opinion, quite satisfyingly. Egon defeating his uncle, and also the alteration between the timelines being in such a way that actually benefited many of the characters, maybe not all of them, but still enough of the characters. One hole in this really beautiful picture at the end of the drama that bothered me was the fact that there was no given solution regarding how their relationship fits into the world. Like, Egon isn't nobody, therefore he would eventually need to marry and have an heir to keep the dynasty going. Taewoo can't just come and go into his world. This multi-dimensional sort of relationship looks pretty cool, but it isn't practical. He would eventually need to present his queen to his world. There was place to actually give a solution to how their relationship would actually fit into the big picture. But back to it, in Goblin, she only had to play around some generous Korean mythology and folklore. That did not impose too many restrictions over how she developed her characters and how she built the relationships. Descendants of the Sun, if you strip it down to its core, you will get 2 love stories. The context of some of the characters being from the military and other characters being doctors or nurses, elements that just complement and complete the skeleton of the story. But other than that, literally no restrictions over what she can do, whatever she wants to do with the characters and the relationships and everything else. Mr. Sunshine may seem a bit more complicated, but honestly, if she had the historical events planned out well enough, then once again she had just enough freedom to build some characters. It gave her freedom enough to do as she pleased. But The King Eternal Monarch, there was no time to do anything properly. The King Eternal Monarch had 16 episodes. Mr. Sunshine had 24 episodes, and it shows the difference of 8 episodes is huge. It may not seem huge, but it's huge because it allowed her to flesh out the characters enough, to flesh out the relationships enough, to build the setting well enough so that each and every element felt complete and entertained the viewer just right. In 16 episodes, she had time to play with some characters around a very simple setting, like Descendants of the Sun, like Goblin. But it wasn't enough time to create a whole alternate universe, to do all the world building needed for the viewer to actually find that alternate universe amazing, incredible, and to feel the desire to immerse himself or herself into it. It wasn't enough time to focus equally on all characters and flesh them out sufficiently for each and every one of the characters to actually feel relevant at all times, feel properly used at all times, and while also feeling realistic and relatable. Now, to conclude everything I said, will I ever recommend The King Eternal Monarch for other people to see? Yes, absolutely, any time of the day. If you do not look for the technical stuff, or the writing technicalities and for production technicalities, then you're safe to have a great experience of a very amazing ambitious story with a very ambitious setting, with any decent characters and some actually pretty great characters, and with some interesting plot lines. Whether you like him or not, you're still gonna root for Egon to defeat his uncle. Whether you find him useful or not for the plot, you're still gonna feel emotional about Shinja's backstory. Whether you feel like I do that she was underused for half of the K-drama or not, still you can't deny that Prime Minister Go Seol-young is actually a pretty darn good character, and she is a total queen and role model for strong female characters, which we actually needed more of in K-dramas. Overall, it's a pretty exciting and really fun drama to watch if you can overlook the technical missteps in the writing. Will I watch the next Kim Woo-suk drama? Well, most likely yes, especially if she learns to come back to earth and write within the framework that advantages her, a simpler setting and enough time to flesh out and craft and develop characters and relationships of great quality, of the kind of quality that earned her the title of renowned writer in the K-drama production world. This being said, this is the end of this video essay regarding what went wrong in the writing room of the King Eternal Monarch. I hope you enjoyed this video, and also I hope you enjoyed this particular sort of video, this video essay thing. I actually really enjoyed making it, and I would gladly make more. Let me know if you'd like more of this sort of content from me, and also let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? How did you feel about the K-drama in the first place? Did you enjoy it? Or I want to hear all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more content. I hope, I don't want to promise because I'm afraid of breaking promises, but I hope at least that I will be able to give you more content more often. I hope you have a great day, stay safe, stay well, and see you soon.